Welcome to My Mentor. This is a platform that seeks to provide world-class mentoring content by leveraging on the skills, experiences, wisdom, and knowledge of established professionals, leaders, business people, and entrepreneurs. We seek to inspire, empower, and challenge professionals and individuals to reach the next level in their professional, business, and career leadership journeys. Welcome to the next level. Sthembiso, thank you so much for making time to be here. I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have. Just give us a bit of a start. Tell us about your upbringing. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school?
Thank you very much, Jabu. Thank you for having me. So my name is Sthembiso Tshabalala. I am originally from KZN. From rural KZN. When I was a school-going age, my uncle said to my dad that I need to go to a Model C school at the time, and I moved to Johannesburg in 1994.
Okay.
I went to some schools in the East Rand, and I started grade 1 in about 1995. I went to 5 different primary schools, because my family moved around quite a bit, which taught me some lessons. And then I went to high school in Sandringham in Johannesburg from 2001 to about 2006. And then I finished high school and went to the University of Johannesburg, where I did a BCom honors in accounting, and then proceeded on to do my articles at Deloitte, and qualified in 2013. But I think growing up, I was a bit of a entrepreneurial person. I ran a couple of businesses when I was in high school, and in grade 12, when I was thinking about what I'm going to do after matric, I was convinced on going to continue to run my business. At the time, I was running a t-shirt printing business, which I had run for most of the year, was making okay money, and had it allowed me some access to different people, etc. But I was dead set on entrepreneurship. And my uncle asked me a very important question, which is still relevant to me today. And he said, what kind of a business person would you be if you're not educated? Now, obviously, not everyone has to be educated, or not every business person is educated. But in my case, I found that as a very important question that set me on a particular path. So that's when I decided to go and research what I should do after I finished matric, which would put me in a good position to be in business. I then spoke to a gentleman who was on the board of an organization called Junior Achievement. I'm still close with Junior Achievement till this day. I'm actually on the board today. And I asked him, what qualification do you think would put me in a good position if I want to be in business? And we spoke about various fields, but accounting is one I enjoyed, and 2, it seems, I think it's still the case today, that accounting is a good base skill if you want to be in the business environment. So I, said, okay, fine, I'll do accounting. And that person is my mentor. I met him in 2006.
Okay, so this was in grade 12?
Grade 12, yes. Okay. And then, so I went and started university. 6.5 years later, once I'd completed all the hurdles of becoming an accountant.
And this was at Wits?
No, University of Johannesburg.
UJ.
Yes.
Why did you choose UJ?
So remember, I was running some small businesses at the time, and I said to myself, I want to continue running those businesses even though I do go to university. So I said to myself, if I go to another province, it'll disrupt my business activities. If I go to Wits, a school I respect quite a lot, I think it was just too expensive. And I said I needed to go to a school which is affordable. And my bursary at the time was quite small, so I didn't want to put too much pressure on my sources of financing or schooling. And I was also able to supplement some of my schooling with the businesses that I ran. But yes, I went to UJ.
And the 3 businesses you spoke about, one was a t-shirt printing business, the other 2?
So I started the t-shirt printing business in grade 11. It ran into my matric year, and I had to sort of slow down because of exams. When I got to university, my friend and I started a music or sound hire business. So he was a DJ and I had quite a bit of equipment. So we just joined forces and we would rent out our equipment to the university, churches, guys throwing parties at university, and just general events kind of activities. We ran that up until I started struggling in university, and then I had to put the business on hold and focus on the studies.
And this was in first year, second year?
That was probably third year.
Okay.
Third year. Obviously, the struggle started earlier, but I think I had to take a conscious decision in third year. And then the third business was I sold beanbags to university students. I guess the kind of businesses that I've always liked is businesses that serviced, the markets that I've been, or the people that I've been exposed to. And what I saw in university is a lot of guys were moving into reses, moving into digs, as they call them, but they didn't have furniture. And beanbags were quite cheap. I think our cheapest beanbag was probably about 300 Rand, and the most expensive one was probably about 800 Rand. And what I would do is I would collect deposits throughout the week. And then on Friday, I'd go borrow the car at home and then go pick up the stock and sell it and deliver it on campus.
So you didn't have to spend your own money to stock up?
Yes. So, and what I've tried to do with some of the businesses that I've been involved in is to get the cash up front, because capital is always a constraint. So in the case of the t-shirt printing business, again, we would take the deposits, 50% deposit up front. That would allow us to buy the material, all the inks, etc., and be able to make the product and then collect the balance on delivery. The same would be the case with the bean bags. In the case of the sound hire business, that one we were able to leverage off equipment that we had at home, and then we used those proceeds to finance more equipment. But yeah, I guess the lesson in all these things is that when we are young business aspirants or entrepreneurs, aspiring to be entrepreneurs, you have to find a unique way to solve for the capital constraint, because no one's going to give you money from the start. You have to almost prove yourself first, and then you'll get the money.
And now you are vice president within the investment banking division of an international bank.
Yes.
Previously vice president at Standard Bank Corporate Finance.
Yes.
The entrepreneurial side of you.
Yes.
How would you say it's helped you to reach where you are now?
So I've always been of a growth and development mindset.
Yeah.
You need to be on a steep learning curve consistently. And coming out of articles, I asked myself, what is the second articles? Because I thought I needed that. And the reason why I had this view was because, the question, when you say you want to be in business, the question is, at what level of business do you want to be in? And sometimes you're able to play at the the very high levels. Sometimes your reality is you can just play in the local markets that you're exposed to. So my entrepreneurial mindset, I was saying, okay, what will get me to the front lines of South African business? And I said, I need to be exposed to that environment. And what I got to is that corporate finance is the best place to be exposed to that, because you're working with very large organizations. You're engaging with a CEO and a CFO at a minimum most of the time. So it's a great way to start thinking like people who are 20, 30, 40 years ahead of you. And then bring in the entrepreneurial mindset. I think the entrepreneurial mindset coupled with, the corporate finance M&A work is that you have a very deep appreciation for the people on the other side and what they've done to get to where they are. It's not just, you have to really be plugged in. It's not just a job. You have to understand that if you, for example, helping someone buy a business, right, because they want to create value, or let me use some practical examples. We once advised a global company buying a South African beverage business. And the beverage business was hugely successful. And the question was, what are the ambitions of the global guys? Why are they looking to buy this local business, and what impact can they have? And the global business obviously bought the business, and they had, some different ways of working to improve the operations of the local business, which I think, you had to be entrepreneurial to understand what these guys are trying to do. Another example I'll look at or talk about is there's a small Black-owned private hospital group which we assisted to buy 2 hospitals in Durban, and on the agenda of transformation, M&A can be an effective it's a real tool to affect transformation, because these guys were buying hospitals that existed but weren't fully optimized. Yeah. So this client of ours, we assisted them in buying the 2 hospitals, and they're now obviously have integrated the businesses. But I think the important thing is, in all cases or in most cases, the person you're sitting across or the person you're advising is an entrepreneur. Yeah. The person who's taking that step. Yeah.
Well, we'll come back to the M&A detail of your career. Yeah. Back to your days of articles.
Yes.
You said you went through a phase where you asked yourself questions about what do you need to do to get to the forefront of South African businesses. Yeah. How did you come to ask those questions? Is it something that came naturally? Did you have a mentor? Were you speaking to people? How did you get to ask yourself those deep questions so that you have a clear path of where to go?
I think it's probably a combination, but I'll say it is so critical to have a mentor, because what a mentor does is that they make you see the bigger picture, the end game, further than where you're currently seeing from where you sit or stand, and that was one of the reasons. So I have a very good mentor. We still have a very good relationship today. And what I like about a relationship is that we don't have to sit and talk every day. Yeah. We don't talk every month. We meet probably once or twice a year. And as long as the mentee, I think the responsibility is for me to take in what we discuss, think about it, go and action it, come back when I've actioned it. Yeah. So that's why the meetings are so infrequent. We come back each year when I think I've achieved what I set out for myself. But I also ask myself some questions. It goes back to that question that I said earlier on, where my uncle asked me that question of what kind of a business person would you be if you're not educated? So that thinking, that mindset of just questioning and asking yourself the end game and, what are you trying to do? How does it look? What best sets you up for what you're trying to do? That came from that. I think a lot of the questions I asked myself came from that one question. And I think it's so important as individuals to continue to ask ourselves questions. I think, every day I ask myself, is this the right thing? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes, you really question whether you're on the right path. Yeah. But I think the more you think about these things, the more you can make sense of it.
Yeah. So during your article years, by the time you left, I think you were rated as a top performer at Deloitte. What does it take to be a top performer in an audit environment?
Look, I don't know if what it took then is still the same thing now, but I would hope it is. I think the first thing is discipline. Yeah. Second is, I think, is a very good and strong work ethic. 3, I think, is initiative. 4, I think you need to be good. You need to be good with people. But I think the article environment is a platform that allows you to learn to be good with people. Especially if you're coming from an auditing firm, because, typically, if you're auditing a client, the client doesn't want you there. It's no secret. They don't like auditors, right?
People don't like auditors.
Yes, but you still need to do your work. So how do you build a relationship with someone who doesn't really want to engage with you?
And how did you do that?
It was difficult in the beginning. And I think what I resolved to do was to always focus on the common objective. Yeah. So for example, even though someone is like a claims clerk or whatever it is, and you're going to ask for claims recons, etc., that work feeds into the broader audit. Mm-hmm. And you would hope that in that organization, the people that person reports to have communicated to them the importance of the audit, right? So you try get to the point of, listen, we both need to get this done. It's in both our interests. When you create that common goal, common objective, I think it's easier to get people to work with you.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I think it's to focus on the work.
Yeah.
You know, work is work. No need to get emotional about it. No need to get personal about it. You know, it's I need what I need. You need what you need, or you have what I need. Let's find a way how we get to our common objective.
What was it like for you? Did you enjoy working in audit, or was it a matter of it's a phase in my life, I need to get past through it?
So I enjoyed audit. I thoroughly enjoyed my auditing time. There were some challenges. I think my darkest moments in my career were during my audit days, or at least in the first 3 months. You know, in the first 2 months, you know, I was really struggling with work, couldn't figure out what I was doing, and I was struggling to communicate. And I remember on this one day, I actually didn't even want to go to work.
Yeah.
You know, when people don't want to go to work and don't like their work, I understand what they mean. It's happened to me before. And ever since that time, I've said it's never going to happen again. And what I try with the people...
What did you do to overcome that?
The first thing was to communicate to the people who were close by. So I spoke to an audit manager at the time. And I said to her, look, I'm struggling with work and I don't think I want to go to work today. And she said, okay, firstly, let's unpack it. What's the issue? Okay, I'm on this client. This is my challenge. I don't understand the work. Okay, fine. If you don't understand the work, who have you spoken to? I hadn't spoken to anyone. So then we chart a path on that.
Yeah.
Have you explained or shared your challenges with the team that you're working with? The answer was no. That doesn't help you either. So, you know, it was, again, someone to talk to. And that's why, again, for me, mentorship is so important. It is so critical to have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Whether you talk to them daily or not daily, just speak to someone. And I think what we sometimes get wrong as young people is we always just think that people are not approachable. You'd be surprised. People go through the same challenges. You know, I've worked with a lot of people or young people who've been through a similar journey through what I've been through, and I can relate to, in some instances, not always, to some of the challenges that they experience. A qualifier that I must make is my experiences in audits, fortunately for me, were quite mechanical. They weren't, there was no, what are the words, maliciousness. I didn't experience any of it.
Yes.
And we know that those things sometimes exist in the workplace.
Yeah.
And those, I think, are more difficult to deal with. But in my case, I think all the challenges that I experienced were challenges that you could solve. And yes, there are some instances where it's a case of you and another person don't get along. And the question is, how do you bridge that? And there is a way to bridge relationships. I was telling an old colleague the other day that I think I'm fortunate to have, in all the work that I've done and all the people that I've come across, yes, we might not have agreed on certain things, but there was always a way to build a bridge. And if you can try that.
Is that a skill?
I don't know if I don't think it's a skill. I think it requires honesty.
Okay.
It requires you to be able to self-introspect. We also get things wrong.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, accept it. Be mature enough and explain to people that actually you're right, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And be humble enough to say, okay, I'll do my best to, work in a particular way or resolve this. And then, I was also fortunate, maybe we'll talk about it later, to do an MBA with African Leadership University. And there's some softer points you learn about people. Sometimes you get people who just trigger you. They haven't done anything.
The wrong way.
They just trigger you, right?
Yes.
And the more important thing is to, as an individual, be aware of people and things that trigger you.
Yeah, self-awareness.
Exactly. So it goes back to the self-introspection, self-awareness aspect. Just know yourself and ask yourself a question, what have you done to try and make the situation better?
I'll come back to that a little bit later. So we're still at Deloitte, you're finishing your articles,
Yes.
you get your CA qualification,
Yes.
which you're a CA now. What does the CA designation mean for you?
For me, the designation is great, but that's not what it was about when I started. It was the learning, it's the process of becoming a CA that's more important. And obviously there's various methods to become a CA these days, but for me, it's such a, and in the role that I'm in, the learnings that I had in articles are so important. One, being client facing, because if you, and I'm, I guess, talking to the guys who are on this journey and thinking about various routes, there are people, your peers, when you come out of university, who go do something that doesn't give them exposure to a client. So that in itself is valuable, because ultimately the client is king, right? And if you get exposure to one company and then another, you get a very broad view of different worlds, and you're able to adapt and operate in
put connections together.
Correct. So I think it was, I really enjoyed that, and I think another thing I enjoyed about Articles is the hard work that's required. Articles is not a 9 to 5. I know that there's overtime and all that stuff, but still, you need to put in the extra hours. Whether it's paid or not, doesn't matter. Put in the extra hours.
And that's contributed to your success post Articles.
I think so, because what putting in extra hours does is that it gives you capacity. It gives you capacity to take on more, to learn more, and you're better prepared for tomorrow. So if you add 2 extra hours today, it frees you up for 2 extra hours tomorrow, where you can find time to have a coffee with the CEO, with the CFO. And just by the way, for me, quite a number of the professional entrepreneurs that I know in my network, I met through Articles. And I took the time outside of the audit
to connect,
to build a relationship. But that requires the discipline to, do your part, do your work, and then create capacity and time to go and have other conversations with people. And the people on the other side, especially business people and entrepreneurs, they see that and they value it. I certainly value it today. So I try as much as I can to meet with people when they're asked to meet. Because when someone asks to meet you, it means that they're thinking about something. There's something
and
that's
they see
consuming
that
their
you can
mind.
add value to that.
Hopefully.
And why did you decide to do your Articles in an audit environment and not a banking environment, for instance?
So it's a debate I had with my mentor at the start, when I was in matric, about tip and top. And the conclusion we got to is, if we go back to the initial question, why do you want to even become a CA to begin with? It's because you want to be in business and you want to be able to add value, etc. So it's more about the learnings. And not to say that you don't learn when you're not in an audit environment. However, the audit environment gives you, I think, the most exposure. So I probably worked or audited 10 different clients during my time in auditing. So that gives me exposure to 10 different workplaces, work cultures, work styles. And for me today, and it's so very relevant because there's a transaction we're working on where I was engaging with a lady who's heads up the investor relations team of her business. And initially she was a bit of a difficult person, but you're able to build a bridge. And you going back to the principle.
And you draw on those previous experiences.
Exactly. And also the technical journey of auditing, I think is a very technical journey. And you're able to carry that throughout your career. Because, if you're talking to a CFO, for example, there's one client I audited where we were doing consolidations, and they probably had in excess of 50 companies. And it was a manual consolidation on an Excel spreadsheet, and I did that for 3 years at this company.
Didn't that drive you crazy?
No. I actually enjoyed it. I've enjoyed consolidations throughout my career, and I think consolidations and M&A are quite close. It's bringing companies together. So those learnings I'm able to use those still today. So to answer your question, I think the auditing point, I know a lot of people weigh up how much you get paid in an auditing environment versus in a top environment, and there's a clear gap. But I think, that difference is important, particularly depending on your circumstance in life. And
it wasn't a driving factor for you?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, I can say today, the money that you sort of make today versus then, what you made then is so irrelevant.
Life is good, right?
I don't know about that, but life gets better. But and I think, you did top, right? So, but at the end of the day, you and I were sitting in the same seats. And we were able to do the same work. So it's just this is what people prefer. It's different strokes. But for me, the people dynamic, the technical aspect, the thick skin that it gave me, and also the the need to, I don't know, I think I like intensive things, like things that really need all of you. I think auditing sometimes needs all of you.
Which I suppose brings me to the next question. M&A is a very intense environment.
Yeah.
You've been in that discipline now for 5-6 years?
Yeah, so I think it's my 7th year.
7th year? Yeah. How have you managed to stick it out for so long?
I think it's a similar principle to the one I was talking about with auditing, where people don't want to work with you and you have to find a common objective. So I think I know where M&A fits in my life. Okay. That's the first point. And where it fits is the technical aspect, just the rigor, the intensity of M&A or mergers and acquisitions. It requires you to be on top of your game. Your clients must like you. In M&A environment, it's even worse in auditing, because in auditing, guys aren't necessarily going to fire you. But as an M&A, professional, your client can easily just say, listen, this mandate, we don't think you're the right advisor for this mandate. Easily. Obviously, it's contractual terms, but people don't see your value, they can cut it quickly. But I like the intensity of the work. I like the client engagement. I've always been interested in how do you add value to people? And you add value to people by many things, but one of the ways is if you can bring solutions to them that they weren't aware of, or for problems that they weren't aware of, and deliver something that ultimately, following your transaction that you advise them on, puts them in a better place, I think you've added value. And one has been fortunate to be part of those kind of transactions before. But it's for me, like I said earlier, second articles.
So
I think that's important.
Let's come back to how you get into M&A. Some people would say it's very difficult to get a spot in M&A. How was it for you? How did you manage to actually get a spot into M&A?
I agree, it is slightly difficult. And the reason why I think it's difficult is because the supply versus the demand for people in M&A is so different. There's much more people trying to get in versus the actual need for people in M&A, especially in the South African context. So that means there's a lot of people trying to get into one place or fighting for one seat. So when there's a lot of you fighting for one seat, you have to differentiate yourself. You need to, one, be clear on what M&A is. It's difficult. It was difficult for me because I wanted to get into this thing, but I'd never seen it. I'd just spoken to a couple of people about it. That point of people is actually the second big part about how I got in. So you have to network, but it's not always a guarantee. But you just need to talk to the right people. I was fortunate to talk to the right people at the right times, and the mentor piece again helped because my mentor said to me at the time, he said, "Look, you can use my CV," and he's a very high-profile person. And he said I could use him as a reference on my CV. And when I
has that helped you?
Like a great deal, because when you put in your CV somewhere, someone will see your CV, they'll see your mentor, and then this is how the thought process works with references. They weren't going to call him and ask him questions, but because people know him, they'll say, okay, fine, this guy has been able to build this relationship with this caliber of a person and manage that relationship for so long. That means clearly he's a person who understands the importance of relationships and can maintain them. But you also have to be able to demonstrate the ability to hold relationships.
You've repeated the point about networks, relationships quite a lot. Obviously, M&A, especially if it's a client-facing role, that is very, very important. What can you share around how to build and nurture relationships that are able to help one in a career setting?
I think one is to get access to people. Access to people is a function of many different things. People are busy these days. And the question is, what agenda can you have with someone that'll make them make time for you? And I think if I think back to my relationship with my mentor in 2006, the way I see it, or I would expect that he probably thought about it, is here's a guy in matric. The email he sent me says he's thinking about what to do after school. He's thinking about X, but he just wants the sounding board. I think there's very few people who'd say no to a meeting like that. Not trying to.
You're not asking for money. You're not asking for favors. You just want to hear what he's got to say.
That's it. And nowadays, the relationships are built on different things. So for example, some clients today, the relationships I'm trying to build is with people who I've never met before, probably don't need what I offer. They can get it from anyone else, but I need to try find relevance with this person. And that can come from, can I talk to you about something I've done before that interests you? You guys want to buy X. I once advised that client on buying Y. You know, this is the learnings that I got. This is the experience that I got.
So you create a connection.
You need to create a connection.
Yeah.
And I think another important thing is, and you know, I was guilty of it in my earlier parts of my career, but I think sometimes what young people make a mistake of doing is they meet people who are high profile, who can make very big impact in their lives, and they almost misuse opportunity on things that they could answer on their own. So for example, I once sat at a dinner table with one of the bank CEOs or former CEOs, and one of the questions I asked, this was early in my career, I asked the guy, you know, what does it take to start a bank? You know, and it's a normal question, right? But for that, you can pick up Google, you can go to the Reserve Bank website, you can check that.
Yes, you can find that out yourself.
I think the deeper question you could ask is, in your process of starting a bank, these are the requirements. How did you guys solve this issue?
Yes.
Right. And it's similar to interviews as well. You know, when guys come to interviews, or even when I sat in interviews in the beginning, I think you have to do the research on what's public. But when you get into the room with someone, you need to be able to ask the questions that they understand they wouldn't get the answers anywhere else but from them. And say, okay, for example, on this transaction, how did you guys get this point across the line? But I think the important thing is, you're not saying what transactions have you worked on?
Yes, it's more deeper than that.
Deeper.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the point around, I think as individuals, we have the responsibility to make sure that when we engage with people, we know as much as we can
Make
based
the best
on
use
other
of that time.
sources. Yes.